welcome everybody to a brand new season of Buzzing with Barca, the BarcaBuzz podcast. We have a lot of new members with us today. Juan, you definitely don't know him from before. He's not Kai, he's Juan. And we also have with us the Pulkit Goyal from the official FC Barcelona YouTube live streams. Pulkit, how are you?
I'm good, Satnik. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Let's cover all the topics today. We have a lot of them. And Juan, how are you?
I'm good.
Okay. Hello, guys. It's Shagnik, your host, and we have a lot of interesting topics to cover today. Sadly, the very first topic is a very depressing one. It seems unbelievable, but however, it is very real that Lionel Messi is now a PSG player. Messi, who we've seen in the last 17 years wear the Blaugrana colors and we've loved him in the red and blue, he's going to wear a red and blue of a different club, Paris Saint-Germain. Pulkit, what do you have to say about this?
Mm, I'm actually, still trying to adjust to the reality that I'm not going to see Leo in Blaugrana colors week in, week out. Not going to see his magic on the pitch. Not going to see the crowd. Of course, we haven't seen it in the last 18 months, though. But I'm not. My breath will not be taken, and I think it's just this really, really sad time for us right now because as fans we feel directionless as to where the club is going and what will happen in the future, what will happen this season, because there are a lot of things to still sort out. So I'm still trying to adjust to the reality. What about you, one?
I would say that I always thought since the birth facts that there was always a possibility of Lionel Messi leaving, even if, of course, the timeline of the events is quite odd in the sense that all was very positive and it felt like at once you literally had a hammer come from the sky and just bridge through everything. So I feel that everything was very sudden for everyone, and I still believe that we're not finished knowing all the details. It's going to take a lot of years to properly understand what's going on. But I definitely, as everyone, feels sad. My only source of optimism is that we've actually got some good options when it comes to the field, and perhaps that could lead to a more collective approach, relying less on individualities from Koeman, which I'm hoping. But generally, of course, it's gonna feel very odd to first not even have Lionel Messi in La Liga, and even less, with other colors, especially when you compare clubs with Paris and our club. I think it's very different histories, especially in terms of how long it is. So it's still gonna feel very odd to see Lionel Messi in another league.
Yes, definitely. And as Pulkit said with the fans, Messi himself said that his last match he would have liked it to be filled with fans to play while they cheer one last time. But sadly, due to this pandemic, we all know what situation we're in. It's something which was impossible, even more impossible than how everything was going perfectly well, or at least Laporta made it look like it. I'm not calling him evil. I'm gonna reiterate more on this in the end of the podcast. But definitely, it was just out of the blue. Nobody expected it. Nobody even thought of it in their wildest dreams. Especially with all the positive reports we got throughout the transfer season, we 100% thought that Messi would stay. But it is what it is. Now, behind this totally unexpected phenomenon, even if there is anyone to blame, who would it be, Kai?
I think if I were to blame someone specifically, it would be obviously Bartom and Marcel, even if they're not in office anymore, because the whole problem of the salary caps is an issue that lies within the methods of those two. As in, you attract the players because of a high salary instead of, the sporting success or a certain project. So now I think that if we're at the stage where we can't even register players, it is more because for years we have filled too high salaries. However, the one thing I'll blame on Laporta, which is not his actual actions, but the one thing that for me lacked is the transparency, as in for months we've been told, yeah, it's clear, etc. And indeed, he was right to say we had a deal. Lionel Messi and Laporte had a deal. What Laporte never mentioned is that he also knew that the CVC deal and the possibility of not being existent to sign Lionel Messi because of the salary cap was never mentioned to the public. And of course, that's for PR reasons, political reasons, and after all, he's the president, so him saying that would basically ruin his PR, which is now anyway sort of ruined at the moment. And so for me, I just need more transparency for him. So that's the only thing I'll properly blame him on.
Okay, a lot of good points there. Pulkit, what about you? Who do you blame?
I very much agree with Juan here that there are multiple parties to blame. Laporta has his share of blame in terms of transparency for sure, but it all started with Josep Maria Bartomeu, didn't it? Because he's a bad negotiator. It's pretty much evident with the kind of transfers we've done under his tutelage, with the kind of wages the players have been having under his tenure. And he basically started all of this. He offered massive contracts, and the other day also we were on the group chat pointing this out, weren't we, that with the Van Alden deal, if Bartomeu was still in charge, he would have offered 4 times the salary after PSG offered double the amount we were offering. But Laporta, to his credit, stuck to his guns, and he said that this is the salary we're going to offer. You come or you don't. So it all started with the previous board, and a lot of it the current board is dealing with, and the lack of transparency and the CVC and the Super League and stuff like that, which we still have a lot to read into because it's not clear. It's all of that to blame. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. I agree with both of you that obviously the situation isn't black and white. It is only shades of grey and grey everywhere. If we started pointing fingers, we would run out of fingers because there are so many parties here to blame. Firstly, Tebas, who brought in a CVC deal which had already been rejected by Serie A and Bundesliga because it's so horrible. Number 2, obviously Laporta for his transparency, but I do think it was to pressurize other clubs into thinking that we're in a comfortable position and we have it planned out. Obviously, everything doesn't go according to plan, so it backfired on him. So he is, of course, to blame even a little bit. But I do think we must strike at the root, the man who is responsible for all the financial disaster class Barcelona is in right now. It is Bartomeu, obviously, because he was the one who ruined everything. The entire situation, all of the debt we're in right now is solely due to Bartomeu. So, as people say that, don't look at the past because it has nothing more to offer. So what we must do right now is just look forward, put our faith in the new president, and hope that he makes some wise decisions to help the club recover all the ground it has lost throughout the years. Speaking of recovering old grounds, we must sell a lot of deadbeat players. I don't like to slander players, but they're definitely deadbeat, as in we do not need them at all in our squad at this moment, and they earn a large number of wages. So exactly which players are these who you guys want to sell and why? We'll start with Kai because he's more analytical.
I would say it's hard to say when we want to stay in realistic terms, because ideally, if we had every condition we wanted, we'd get basically any players that doesn't seem beneficial in the short and long term. This includes players like Coutinho, TT, but even players that are about to end their careers, which includes Pique and Alba, obviously not this season, but they're slowly approaching the stadium. And that's the same with, Busquets. It's all this generation, and perhaps Messi leaving first out of all of them might, encourage a certain warning that was needed since years. So for me, ideally, you really have to get the highest salary first that really can't bring anything. Because, for example, Griezmann has a high salary, but yes, he can still bring something on the table, especially when you consider Messi is not there anymore, which also doesn't give him any excuse. But then there are players like Umtiti or Coutinho, where the future looks so bleak that you can't justify their presence. For example, Umtiti, we know that since years he's been injured since that one injury in the World Cup, and since then he's just not brought anything and hasn't justified in any way his presence and even less his salary. And for Coutinho, for example, yes, he was a superstar whatsoever, but as of now, it doesn't look like his profile is going to suit us in any way possible, no matter who's the manager. Because he's seen multiple managers and none of them have really used him in a way that seems beneficial to us. Not sure at the fact that there's 20 million on the table if he plays a certain amount of matches. So for me, the thing is Umtiti, Coutinho, and maybe Dembele, because his future looks quite bleak as well, would be my first top three, and if we could Neto as well. The problem is, if you say realistic, none of these clubs want them, because even if they can be suitable for, let's say, mid-table clubs that sit between the 6th and the 10th position, for example, they can't afford the salaries. That's true before COVID, and after COVID, or during COVID, better said, it's gone even worse. So trying to offload the player, knowing that these clubs know that this player won't bring as much and cost maybe sometimes twice as a normal player in their squad, is for them, of course, a bad deal given the variety in the market. So, of course, ideally, Umtiti, Coutinho would be my dream to sell, but I just don't see it happening.
Yes, exactly, Kai. There are 2 or 3 players which every Barcelona fan would agree we need to get rid of. But because we don't want them, it is for good reason that we don't want them. And with their poor performance, some players like Umtiti, Roberto, and Pjanic, obviously other clubs don't want them, not because they are that bad, but because they earn so much. Even a phenomenal player like Griezmann was supposed to be offloaded to Atletico in exchange of Saul, but the deal couldn't happen solely because Barcelona did not want to pay a penny of his salary, and Atleti thought that even for a player of a caliber of Antoine Griezmann, the salary offered to him by Bartomeu was way too high. Pulkit, you want to add anything on to this?
I don't think I have anything to add really. You covered it all. I just wanted to add one thing that, these players like Coutinho, I think he can play in the number 10 role, right? But I think because of his past form, injuries and everything, he is way behind the pecking order now. I mean, Pedri, Demir, and maybe Gavi also can take his place. Similarly with Pjanic, we have a lot of midfielders. And he'll always be behind in the pecking order. And with Griezmann also, Fatih, Demir, Depay, maybe Brathwaite also, if we can't sell him, can take his place, because it's just how they have been this season. Griezmann did play well in the latter half of last season. That was because of Messi. And since he's not there, I don't think Griezmann can do that again. And we've seen in pre-season, Griezmann isn't that good either. And with Umtiti, of course, we need to get rid of him. That's for sure. And Dembele also.
Yep, definitely what you say is right. And even with our current situation, there are some offers for Brathwaite from Benfica for 10 million. However, how far it goes because his wages are so high remains to be seen. With our current roster of players, I don't think at all that all hope is lost because Messi isn't with us anymore. Of course, defense is an issue, definitely, and Koeman always wanted a more experienced and a more physical, put that in quotes, midfielder. He didn't get it, so he definitely has to improvise. What other expectations do you guys hold from the new season? We'll start with Kai.
I would say if there's something I really expect is a more collective approach from Koeman, because often we've relied on Messi or Griezmann or any player up front, maybe Pedro for example, that would have this moment where they do something and then out of nowhere we score the goal. And what I'm hoping is a more fluid approach to the game, maybe on or off the ball. And then of course have some expectations of players to be played. I mean, if you look at the preseason of Demir, it's very hard to see him not playing now, admittedly, because he is preferred to Criada as of now. and the only close person to have his caliber in terms of prestige would be Dembele, who's now sitting in the hospital. So not playing him, given that how much he was trusted in the preseason, wouldn't make sense. I expect a lot of him, a lot to develop, because I already saw him when he was in the Austrian league. So obviously I know the player sort of. And then another player I think where you really have to put expectations on, even though I had to say this, is Griezmann. Because the Griezmann clan has always been saying that Messi was a problem, and that's true that in a certain way their roles in the game is very similar. Now that Messi is gone, I don't think that Griezmann has any sort of excuse to not perform, given that he will be the magnet and he will have to not perform like Messi, because that's virtually impossible, but at least to up his game, both in the game and in terms of numbers. And then of course, the question for me is how Koeman will continue this sort of transition season. Because we often talk, about having the rebuild, etc. And now we have to see this in action, because now that Messi is gone, firstly, you've got someone who presses more, given that Messi didn't used to press, but that also means that you have to replace everything. And for example, the midfield, the question for me remains, what will be Busquets now? For example, if you look at Nick Gonzalez, who had some decent and actually interesting minutes, is he going to get a role, or do we keep Busquets until we can't anymore and he's injured and we're forced to change the almost the whole system? Given that before we usually say Busquets and Messi are the system, now one of them is gone. So what happened with Busquets? What happened with Alan Piqué? That's my question, and obviously it depends if we can register new signings, because if so, Koeman should not have an excuse, given that he got Depay, he got Emerson, he got Garcia, which are signings he often requested for, especially in case of Garcia and Depay. So my question to Koeman is, are you going to solve the problems that were not solved in first season, given that you have new signings, given that now you had more time to think about them? And of course, I know that Messi has left, etc. But the point is, as a manager, you're supposed to solve problems. And if you can't solve these problems, then you're not worth coaching, because this is all, at least for me, what coaching is about. So I'm excited to see, maybe defensive or offensive issues, how Koeman will alternate his system or adjust it so that it becomes more functional than last season.
Yeah, a lot of good points there, and especially since the very beginning, Koeman's favoritism over rotation and everything. Pulkit, what do you want to add on to the expectations from the new season?
Yeah, so I agree with Juan, it's a transition year in continuation. And also, I think as fans, we give a lot of stick to Koeman, which he does not deserve. Of course, he's not that level of coach as maybe a Guardiola or a Klopp or a Poch or whoever, or Tuchel and all these people, although he has coached the Netherlands national team. But before that, his coaching record has not been that good. And he took on a Barcelona last year where Messi wanted to leave. There were a lot of off-the-ball issues then also, when the Bartomeu thing that he was forced to resign, would have no confidence in Laporta coming in. Last season was a very,
However, this season he did have, unlike last season, this season he does have some signings that he asked for. People like Emerson, Garcia, Aguero, who is unfortunately out for 8 to 10 weeks now, and for another 9, which he has requested to the club. He has been told that he's gonna get another 9 signed, if and only if we can manage to sell Martin Braithwaite. So what do you want to comment on the new faces, Kai? Which new faces are you relying on the most, and what do you expect from each of them?
It's hard to say rely on them, because, as I said, I'm expecting a collective approach. But what I'd say is that I have high expectations if we get this through of the pay, because he's adapted more quickly, or at least more than I originally thought he would. I didn't think that he'd explode right away with the season, and of course you could argue it's normal because he's at the prime of his career, he's hungry for new titles because he just left Lyon to Barca, which is a huge difference in prestige. But he's still one of the players that I hope to be the most decisive in terms of surprising the opponent. And even with Griezmann, we saw that sometimes they can combine very well, and that comes excellently, because before I had the question, will it work with Messi? But now that Messi is gone, that these two could combine very well. I don't really have high expectations for Emerson because I simply think that Best is more adapted to us, and originally I wasn't really for Emerson signings, nor was I against, but it's not really the type of signing that hyped me a lot. What I would say is I have quite high expectations for Garcia, and that's not, as in if we score one goal, I'm gonna blame you. It's more that I've watched him basically since he was a teenager, more or less, and I know him. And when he played with Spain, for me at least, he played excellently as well. Of course, I do believe he has a great future. Of course, there are limits, etc. But definitely think that that's one of the players I'm looking towards, having a great season. And finally, if I had to name a third player with high expectations, it's probably Pedro and Frankie, because they've had a good season, but they can get better. And I'm really hoping that with a more supporting attack and / defense, that this can improve to the next level.
Yes, Pedri, Frenkie, Busquets, right now, even in my opinion, I think it's our strongest midfield trio. Though none of them are new faces are mostly in forwards, Depay, and it remains to be seen how his chemistry with Griezmann turns out to, and whether Koeman trusts Depay to pair up with Griezmann, or maybe Fati if he recovers soon. That remains to be seen. Pulkit, what about you? What do you want to say about the new signings?
So new signings, good signings in Memphis, Garcia, Emerson, and Yusuf Demir. And you know how much of a favorite Demir is for me.
Yeah.
And from time and time again, I have mentioned his name, and he has really shown that even though he was signed with the V team and he will remain there, although will be playing for the first team because of the registration issues. With the new signings, I have really high hopes for that guy. I think he'll snatch Dembele's and Griezmann's place in the squad and make it his. And would love to see he linking up with Pedri, with Puig, with Fati, with Memphis, because you see that he has that desire on the pitch to score, to take on defenders, to make runs in behind, and even to help out in defense at the back. So he has that desire. He has I want to prove myself. That hunger. He's not nervous. Even though it's just pre-season, but he got an assist for Memphis against Juve, didn't he? And he scored one also against Salzburg, I think it was. So very high hopes from him for him, and I think also since Pedri needs to be given rest, so I hope to see Puig a little more. And I don't get the criticism that Pedri is better than Puig. They are two different sort of players, different profiles. They offer different stuff on the pitch. So it's not that one is better than the other. So hoping to see more game time for Puig because Busquets is aging and he's not the same, and he'll be aged out. So maybe De Jong goes into that position, or maybe Nico Gonzalez is used in that position. It remains to be seen. Also to see the back line, because we have Emerson and Garcia coming in, so how they fit in, how they build up their partnership with Araujo, with Balde or Alba, and how it shapes up. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely. And among the new faces, there are a ton of youngsters. La Masia never disappoints, and we also signed Yusuf Demir, the youngster. There is also Collado, who was supposed to go on loan to Club Brugge. I guess that's how it's pronounced. I am not really sure. It's a Belgian club. So
yeah, that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, thanks. I got lucky. So even he's gonna probably stay, because I think it's way too late to look for another loan offer. Maybe he'll start in the team. There are also numerous other promising youngsters. Like you said, Busquets is aging. Maybe he'll train the prodigy Nico before he goes. What do you guys think? Is it youngster time? Definitely, it is youngsters' time. And how do you think it will pan out in the club? Pulkit, we'll start with you.
Definitely love to see La Masia players coming in. Do you remember the time when Fatih came in? I mean, as much thick as Valverde gets for his tactics and stubbornness and everything, he was the one who gave Fatih the opportunity, and he just exploded onto the scene, didn't he? 2 seasons ago. And we saw how good is he, and we've seen how good Gavi, Nico Gonzalez are. We yet to see how good Garcia is, because he hasn't played much for his former club City, but has played for the national team. So definitely it is youngster time. It is, to see young talent, shine on week in, week out. But still, as fans, we don't need to be emotional, because it's a very crucial time for us, because Messi left, and a natural instinct would be, okay, Fatih is the next Messi, Demir is the next Messi, Pedri is the next Messi. We'll always look for that next Messi, like we looked for the next Pep in the managers that we signed or want to sign in Xavi, for instance, in the future sometime. So that kind of mentality we need to remove from our heads. But fans are emotional, fans are weird, so fans are irrational, I should say, maybe. So we have these unrealistic expectations that we should not have. We should give them time to adapt, give them time to adjust to the highest level, give them time to, build a chemistry, build a team, build an understanding between them, and then we can maybe talk about those kinds of conversations we can have. So really excited to see the new team, because the transition phase, the post-Messi era that was supposed to happen maybe 5 years later, is happening now, and it might just be a good thing for us in the long term that we are not maybe able to see now. So.
Wonderfully said, Pulkit. And as you said, we keep looking for the next Messi, even though we know we'll never find another Messi. Same with Pep. We'll never find another Pep. But we did discover Xavi, who will come to the club in future, and maybe he's gonna be as good or even better than Pep. Similarly, with these youngsters, they are still young. They lack experience. They haven't faced really big teams in really big stages, and after all, they are human. They do have nerves and they do get nervous. They don't have the experience to go out and carry the weight of the team. They're not yet responsible. And I personally do think that a proper balance between seasoned veterans and youngsters is required for a team to flourish properly. Just old players, just experienced players do not win you trophies, and neither do just youngsters. Yes, they're faster, yes, they're more energetic, but somewhere they lack the perfect decision making, if you know what I'm saying. So Kai, what do you want to add on to this?
I would add that the thing is, we don't really have a choice in this moment, and gladly so, in a way, because the current generations, and it's not the only generation, but there's quite a few generations in La Masia that now are excellent. Whether you look at the Juvenil or the Barca B team, you have excellent players almost everywhere. Bar the right back and striker position, which remains an issue. But otherwise, you can see with Oscar Mingueza, Garcia wasn't former La Masia, and even though he's not in our team anymore, there's Dani Olmo, who's now at Leipzig, that had quite a good tournament at the Euros as well. So the point is, you have a lot of younger generations coming up, and of course it's hard to know who will actually make through. Because the players like Carles Alenia and currently Enrique Puig is facing the same sort of issue. But the point is, there's a lot of players that we can discover and should try out. So I like the fact that we're forced to push this trust towards the youth. Now, of course, as you just said, there has to be a limit, because you can't always play with youngsters, because who's going to lead a group of unexperienced players? And of course, the age doesn't mean anything. A player that is, say, 20 can be much more mature than another one is 28. It's not the point. But the thing is, you want to have a healthy mix, and currently we're a bit lacking of it because during the Valverde era we were too old, so-called, and now we've become almost too young. And at some point we got to find a balance because currently we have a lot.
And Barcelona youngsters, La Masia players, have disappointed very, very occasionally. And speaking of disappointing youngsters in Barcelona, we will now talk
Moriba.
about what?
I know Moriba, right?
Yeah, of course. Now we're gonna talk about Ilaix Moriba, a player who has chosen sitting in the club, not playing a single match, just because he wants to wait till a better offer comes to him next season. He is literally choosing to skip one entire season of playing football just for money. Maybe it's not what it looks like on the surface. Maybe there's more to it. Kai, what do you want to say about this?
I think it's very hard in modern football to say the player wants to play for money or wants to have a raise, because in the case of Ilaix Moriba, and that's the case of quite a lot of players actually, they're controlled more by the surroundings, which may include agents, but also their own families. And in the case of Moriba, that's the point. It is his family that feels apparently that he is not paid enough, even though he was, I think, in his last salary raise, his last contract, he was the highest La Masia player paid. I don't remember how much, but either point is he was paid way more than the rest. And there's been, of course, this commercial stuff because he's been hyped from the very beginning, and in a way that reminds me of the Xavi Simons situation, in the sense that yes, he is a great player, but personally, I wouldn't say he's the best player of that generation. I would say that he was one of them, but personally, I would say that I was more impressed by Nico, Alejandro, or Diana rather than him. But in either case, that's not to say he's a bad player. He's a very promising player, there's no doubt in that. But there is also a point where the club had to say, no, we don't want to do that again. And Laporta's decision making for me was there excellent in to say, here's the limit, take it or leave it. And it seems that Moriba is going for, I'm going to leave that, etc. And I'm assuming that clubs will come at him at some point, whether it may be next season, even after a whole season on the bench or now. Because for me the point is, he's a great player, but if you cannot control your surroundings, especially when the club is in such a crisis, we don't have time for that, because there's billions of other problems between the CVC, Messi, other contract renewals, and the club cannot afford to think, is this player well represented? What does the actual player want? Because I believe that Moriba doesn't care as much about his salary as we said should be, but his surrounding does. And it's very unfortunate to have this type of surrounding that has different goals than your own. But at the end of the day, his surrounding, whoever Barca is dealing with, his agents or his own family, is what officially represents the player. And in that sense, it is that surrounding, toxic surrounding actually, that we're forced to deal with, and therefore we have to say, no, you can't continue not with that surrounding.
Yeah, definitely, especially if it's a surrounding that makes you stop playing the sport altogether for a season. You need to do something about it. You need to have a spine, make your own decisions. And obviously this is a very shameless move to ask for a raise when you're already one of the highest paid youngsters in the world, and when your club is in such a staggering debt. He's not, he obviously knows what the club is going through right now, and even after that, if him or the people in his surroundings demand for more wages, especially since he's still so young and has, forgive me for saying this, he really has negligible, what do I say, productive contribution to matches of Barcelona as a whole. Not talking about in-game performance, but his impact on score lines or his impact on winning trophies has been really negligible. So, Pulkit, what do you want to say about him?
I think I completely agree that we do not need this toxicity in our dressing room. We can't have that. And I read somewhere that the new contract that he wants, it will make him a higher earner than Pedri. And we all know what Pedri is, who Pedri is, what he brings to the pitch, right? So I don't think that we need such kind of behavior in our dressing room. And Laporta, of course, has taken that beaten out, that that bullet out of the chamber. That player has the power in the dressing room. So that won't happen anymore. If it were Bartomeu, we'd already be seeing that Moriba is one of the top 10 owners in the first team. So thankfully, that's not going to happen. But I feel sad for the guy because if he chooses to not play for a year and then goes on a free, of course, it's a financial loss for us. But I think it's a footballing loss for the player because he will be out of the game for a year, and that's for a young player like him, that's a lot of time, and he needs to play in order to develop. So I don't think
We got a different match to think about right now. It is our Liga debut in a few days, and it is versus Sociedad. It will be officiated by Hernandez. Of the last 7 matches he has officiated for Barcelona, we have only been able to win 1. 4 years ago, he didn't allow a clear goal versus Betis. We're gonna put the link to the goal in the description if you guys want to check it out. It was pure blasphemy. It was a clear goal and he apparently couldn't see it. The ball was John Cena maybe, I have no idea. So what do you people want to see in the lineup maybe, or in the tactics? We'll start with Kai because Analysis FC.
Yes, what I'd say is that it's hard for me, to root for someone. Of course, I hope that we win, but point is, Real Sociedad is like sort of my second team to say, because they embrace positional play and the use of academies that I really like, and that goes for many of their players that come from their academy and go on to be successful. This includes players like Zubimendi, who's one of the most promising under 23 midfielders, as far as I'm concerned. And this includes also in the attack, where you have Oyarzabal and other players. So the point is, we're going to see a very functional team, at least I expect so. And where perhaps we did have 3 matches of testing, etc., but I'm still not sure to what extent this team or this portion of a team can survive competitively. That means, how do they behave if we're 1-0 down? What happens then? Who will be the one to rise up and say, guys, let's end up? So that's the point. Individual performances, not really sure. I'd expect at least that we have a good pressing, because that's going to be the most important for me, who has the best press, because that's going to basically decide the whole thing. So that's what I would say. And the other thing is for me, to what extent can we score the chances created, which has been an issue for like 3 years now.
A very interesting choice of words, Kai. Whether the team will survive or not. Like, we know that Real Sociedad isn't that great of a team, but it's Hernandez who is refereeing the match, so we never know. Furthermore, last season we lost so many deciding factors in the league. Easy matches which we just bottled, and Atletico turned out to be the runaway league winners. Even Atletico and Madrid bottled many matches. However, in the beginning of the season, last season, we bottled so many matches that there was a phenomenally huge gap between the top 2 teams and Barcelona in terms of points. So this season we must take every match seriously from the front, because as we go forward and as the league starts closing, nerves start to act. Players make silly errors, crucial errors, because they don't always have ice in their veins, and it is better to be in a more comfortable position during the middle of a league or during the end of a league than in the beginning of a league. So I would obviously suggest a more fluid approach to the playing style as compared to last season. No double pivot absolutely for me. All the way 4-3-3, and I think Busquets and Depay will be crucial. And who Depay pairs up with as an attacking duo, the most chemistry he's gonna have with is a mystery. But I do think that Koeman will try to develop Deepay's chemistry with Griezmann now that Messi is gone. As for Coutinho, I don't want him to play because we gotta pay money to Liverpool after he completes a certain number of matches. As for the back four, I really think that Araujo and Garcia should be tested versus Sociedad, whether they are capable enough to be the sole two centre backs, because some people still think that we need a more experienced person in the back four, and Araujo and Garcia are too young to be fully trusted, and that includes me. I will openly accept it. I want to see if they're responsible enough. And apart from that, it is very well if Koeman rotates and doesn't put too much pressure on a single player like Pedri. Even Puig, I don't want him to become the second Pedri doing child labor. Pulkit, what about you? What do you want to see?
Child labor.
Yeah, it's
Good
a very
one there.
contrasting thing, right? Last season he got barely any minutes.
Yeah, definitely. And we need to manage Pedri's minutes, and Puig and Gavi will be used in that position for sure. And although we read that Koeman likes Coutinho, so maybe he uses Coutinho also in that position. We never know. With Depay,
Yeah, and it was spot on and very realistic 11. So kudos to that. So now we're gonna move on to the final words, a monologue. Sky, you wanna start?
Alright, so I'll start and I'll talk about the pressing because it's been an issue that people have talked about a lot, and it's been my issue since Koeman has arrived. And the point is, many blame the pressing approach itself, and I get that because it's not the traditional approach that we've seen at Barcelona. It's an approach that aims to get the ball as fast by storming the opponent, the specific individual that has the ball, instead of setting up a proper organized press. And of course, this leads to improvisation and less planned issues that than most of would like to. But my point is that it's not the pressing issue itself that is a problem. One of the problems to me is that there's a few details in how we approach our pressing that lead to dysfunctionalities that can be easily exploited. And you could see that quite a lot against Juventus, because often we play with our fullbacks very high, and that's a result because we don't use wingers on the Koeman. The fullbacks usually take all the width, and that goes offensively and offensively. And the problem with that is that both Alba and Dest are, very high up, which means that they can be eliminated very easily, because that's the point of, having different lanes on a horizontal level. And to me, the issue with that is that we should have one of Alba or Dest, preferably Dest, a bit deeper, so that at least the one has the time to come back and actually reset the position, so that we don't get outnumbered through the midfield in a few seconds. There's often, that one delay of a certain player pressing too late in accordance to his teammates, which then creates a whole delay. And this whole delay gives that space for that one pass that is the through ball that is the chance that we concede afterwards. So to me, what people should reconsider in their assessment of Koeman is that the pressing idea itself does work. It does have the outcome usually that Koeman actually wants and that we should want as well, which is to gain the ball back as quickly as possible. Now the problem is to me that there's still quite a few details which I'm not sure why he hasn't solved them yet, because I don't think they're that hard to solve without oversimplifying everything. But the point is, you can solve this even with the players you currently have. And of course, I'm impressed. I'm excited to see against Sociedad or other future games whether my advice will be taken into account. I don't think so, because Koeman doesn't hear me. But either way, I hope that we're going to see this sort of details. Yeah.
When was the last time you checked under your bed, Kai?
You don't say.
Yeah, so please continue.
Anyway, that was for me. Yeah, so my point is that there's quite often what Koeman lacks is not the general idea, because most say that he doesn't know our philosophy, blah blah blah. But I think that in many ways he does embrace our philosophy, but he often lacks that final touch, that sort of detail that maybe we expect because we had Pep and we had coaches that really paid attention to every single detail. And maybe Koeman hasn't considered, changing or tweaking, as I said, his pressing issues. But initially, I don't think that the pressing issues we outlined are directly linked to the pressing itself. It's more linked to the positioning that is a result of attacking problems more than purely defensive.
Yes, very interesting outlook on what I would say a glass is half full situation. So yeah, Pulkit, your turn. Go.
So, very good point one, and I think he'll be forced to change his pressing tactics because there's no Messi anymore. So it was usually centered around one person earlier, and that's how players used to position themselves also and used to play in a certain way. So I think Koeman now will now be forced to change his attacking tactics altogether, and we'll see a different sort of Barcelona now. And I just wanted to talk about my boy Demir, who I've already mentioned a lot in the podcast so far, but I'll just mention about his link up with Pedri and possibly with Fati and if he plays on the right, so the right back who will be Emerson or Dest, which remains to be seen. So, given his maturity on the pitch, given how he has played on the pitch as of now, given how his hunger and thirst for running in behind and scoring goals is, I think he has really been able to adapt for a teenager who just came. And I think he can really be relied upon in the long term if we protect him from the media, if we do not hype him, and if he does not get injured, of course, like Fatih did. And we have forgotten as fans how good Fatih is because he's been out for so long and so much has happened also. So really waiting to see both of them, Fatih and Demir, on either wing, maybe with Depay in the middle, Memphis in the middle, and Pedri and in the number 10 position. It's like the dream. So would love to see such a sight. And I don't think we've seen Fatih and Pedri also play together a lot last season. I don't think we have because Fatih got injured very early. So would love to see that also. So just wanted to mention that. What's your take, Sagnik?
Yeah, so a lot of people, the podcast today started with Messi, and it's only fair it ends with him. He's such a
Definitely.
legend. Yeah, so I've seen all over Twitter, people are pointing fingers at basically everybody. The most of all on Laporta. Now, obviously, he is not scot-free, he's not an angel, nothing in this world is black and white. So I have researched more into what was behind Messi's unexpected farewell from Barcelona, and I've gained some insight which I want to share with people. First of all, what people have blamed on Laporta the most is that apparently the sole entity what his election campaign was based on was the promise that Messi will stay. Here is what I would like to point out. Nowhere during his election campaign did Laporta said that Messi will 100% stay in the club if he wins. All he did was promise that he would try his best to ask Messi to renew with the club. And he committed, he fulfilled his end of the deal. Messi was ready to sign for the club. Everything was going smoothly. 100% we were sure that Messi would sign. Even on his 34th birthday, we made a tribute in which we wrote that here's to one more year of the greatest of all time, Lionel Messi. So it was totally unexpected, and Laporta, on his part, convinced Messi to stay. But there were a lot more things going on behind the scenes. First of all, there was Tebas, who brought in the CVC deal, which is totally insane for just a sum of like $270 million, of which only 40 million would be spent on transfers. We would have to pay them more than 11% of TV revenue for 50 years, for half a decade. Laporta had to choose between, this was a bang-on bribery if you ask me. Tebas was bribing Laporta into taking a deal which was so horrible. The Serie A and Bundesliga already refused the deal, and now Madrid and Barca have both issued notices against the deal, that they don't condone the deal, they don't support it at all. It's a rip-off and is harmful to most clubs. He technically wanted to force Laporta into taking the CVC deal because he thought that Laporta was desperate to sign Messi. And here is where I want to talk about Laporta's transparency. The way I see it is because firstly we were on a deal negotiation with Griezmann and Saul, so he couldn't really get his guard down, because if he even told us that it is hard to sign Messi right now, news travels, even walls have ears, and obviously this is Twitter, and it would be very well known that the club was on a back foot right now, and they were desperate to make a deal which would probably make Atleti even negotiate even harder. However, the deal didn't work out in the end. You can't blame the man for trying to maintain this figure of having the upper hand, this illusion of having the upper hand, because he clearly had some intentions behind it. It's not really deception, it is top-notch politics, and through politics he did fulfilled his promise very well. Messi was ready to sign a contract which reduced his salary from 110 million to 40 million, which would gradually increase over the years, and would give Laporta like a year to restructure the finances of the club to get us on the upper hand. And within the very few months he was in power, Laporta has already reduced the wage bill to 95% without Messi, which finally means that we have a positive cash flow in a club that Bartomeu ruined for 5 years. He basically molested the club for 5 years, and within these few months Laporta has already made a positive cash flow. And here it was a right decision on his part. I think he had to choose between 3 or 4 years of Messi and 50 years of the club giving pointless TV revenue to a CVC company. And especially with the Griezmann deal going on back then, I don't think he could afford being transparent with everyone, because that's not how politics works. So of course it's not 100% not his fault. I'm not defending him or anything, because the Griezmann deal was practically impossible because Atletico didn't want to pay all of his wages, which again tracks back to Bartomeu's fault, who gave him ridiculous wages. And Barcelona did not want to pay even a penny of Griezmann's wage. Griezmann said that he was ready to take a pay cut, though how much he would take is left to be seen. But still, Laporta didn't take any more initiative towards the Griezmann-Saul swap. The only downside of him, which I can spot during his role in the Messi saga, is that he could have made more effort to offload Griezmann to Atletico. But really, he has a lot of dead weight pulling him down, like Umtiti, Pjanic, and so many other players who no other club want. Still, he has produced a positive cash flow to the club. Finally, 5 years damage reversed in a few months, and more to come in the future, hopefully. So that's all I want to say, is that the past is the past. Messi is gone. It's a huge blow, but what we can do right now as Barcelona fans is just pull through this difficult time, just put in all of our efforts into this, the club, the management, and all we can do is just support them during their darkest times. If we were there when they won the sextuplet, when they won the treble, when prime MSN was underway, I think it is our responsibility to support the club even in the disaster they are in right now. It is our most basic responsibility.
I think
What do you guys want to say?
Rise.
Yeah.
So I believe you're right. I read somewhere that if you can't support us when we lose, then don't support us when we win either. So I think that's very true. And the club is in a crisis, and we all knew that the day when Messi leaves would come, although we never imagined this is how it would happen. But it is what it is, and we need to just try and move on, and we need to focus on rebuilding. And we need to support the club rather than pointing fingers and criticizing it's his fault, it's her fault, it's that person's fault. We just need to see the positives and try to rebuild. So yeah.
Definitely spot on, Pulkit. Kai, anything you want to tell the people before we end today's podcast?
I would say that the thing is, sport and Barcelona football goes beyond Messi. Of course, he's the GOAT, he's the legend. But ultimately, as Pocket already said, there was a time where we knew he was gonna leave, and I would agree that the farewell wasn't adapted, that it is not in the way we wanted to part with him. But ultimately, we had to. And the point is, it's not as pessimistic as most think it should be, and that's mainly because I don't think most of the fans watch La Masia often or watch La Liga in general, and that's why I believe that we have our chances, and from now on we can only go higher. At this point, I don't think we can go lower than we currently are. So for me, just saying, well, Messi is gone, so I won't support the club, reveals its true nature, and in that aspect, for me at least, football was always and is always about ideas, and for me that will stay. Even without Messi, there will be tactical innovations, and therefore I will continue watching the sport, and I encourage everyone to do so.
Yes, exactly. A very optimistic outlook that being at the rock bottom means there's only one way to go now, that is upwards. With that, fellow culés, don't lose hope, stick with the club, Forza Barca forever, and signing out. Goodbye.